Welcome to I Could Talk to You All Day. I'm Lauren Lefkowitz, recovering workaholic, perfectionist, and people pleaser.
And I'm John Spears, emerging from playing small, getting caught up in the inertia of life, and always being on.
I Could Talk to You All Day is a show for executives and emerging leaders. This is not just another leadership podcast. We're here to talk about what it means to be a leader while also being human.
So join us for raw, vulnerable, and probably pretty funny conversations about shifting from surviving at work and home to thriving in the life you've always wanted. Let's get the conversation started.
John Spears.
Lauren Lefkowitz.
We made it.
We made it. It's another day.
It's another day.
We're here to tell the story.
How was your weekend?
I don't know what story I'm going to tell, but I'm here to tell a story.
How
was my weekend?
Stories. You're going to tell some stories today.
I am. And I'm going to tell one now about my weekend. Can I tell you, I kind of hate that. Like I did a thing, you know, those things on Instagram, like I did a thing, right? I've done that. I posted it. So like no hate, because I know you have as well. And I know a lot of the people that are listening be like, I did a thing, but I did a thing this weekend and I'm really proud of it. And it's really kind of silly, but I think for me, it really highlights and pinpoints growth in my life. And I'm super excited about it. So here's what I did. I have like millions of other Americans, maybe not millions, hundreds of thousands of other Americans got really into pickleball. Like I'm into pickleball. Like I'm in it. I'm like taking lessons. I'm doing a clinic. I'm like playing with my son and my friends. And I really want to get better. It's like, I have some hobbies, but I have like decided that pickleball is going to be like a thing that I'm going to do. And I want to get better and I don't know how to get better. And I took this clinic this weekend on Saturday and the guy was like, you need to go to like more open play leagues, like just start going and playing with people. And I'm like, wait, going and playing with people I don't know, that I've never met before, that like, I'm not sure if they're going to be better than me or if I'm going to be worse. And I don't know if I'm going to do it right. And so I looked at the gym that I belong in and there was a open play for people at my level. I'm beginner. I'm like a 2 and it goes up to like 4, I think. So I'm like beginner bottom, like not amazing. And I really wanted to go, but I was really nervous. I was really kind of scared to go. I was having this internal dialogue with myself about, should I do this? Should I not do this? And I decided to do it. And like, as I was walking into the gym where we have like these amazing, like 6-court indoor pickleball thing, there was a point where I stopped and I was like, I'm not going to do it. Like I was like walking up and I just like stopped in my tracks and I was like, no, you can't do this. You can't do this. Like you're going to look foolish. You're going to be the worst one there. Had all these stories about how this non-competitive beginner open play pickleball thing was going to go. And I walked in and I did it. And can I tell you, it was one of the best things I've ever done. Not because like it was, it was really fun. But because in the little things, I showed myself that I can do something. Like I think about growth and it's not in like the big things, like the big moments. And it's in these like little small moments. And I'm just stoked about that. And I'm feeling like really invigorated. The whole day yesterday, I was like, I had this energy flowing through me and it was like really amazing.
Are you saying you allowed yourself to be coached?
I did. I allowed myself to be coached. I coached myself. I like stopped the ruminating thoughts. I stopped the stories of like, you're going to look foolish and you're going to be the worst one there. I will say, me and my partner did get beat by an 80-year-old. And I was like, it was a good lesson. But we won 2 games and we lost 2 games and I had a really fun time. And I coached myself into getting out of the pattern that like holds me back into doing things that keep me small and that keep me back from doing the things I really, really want to do in life.
Oh, there's so much in there. You let yourself be a beginner. You let yourself be in practice. You laughed when you got beaten by an 80-year-old.
She whipped us. She whipped us real good. Her and her partner.
Well, you know, pickleball was initially intended for the older crowd. Mm-hmm. Well, that's how it was marketed anyway, because it's a smaller court and shorter distances to run and all of that. Yeah, that's amazing.
I had an opposite kind of weekend of what is normal for me, which is that on Friday, the one appointment I had got canceled. I didn't have anything on Saturday. I didn't have anything on Sunday. So 3 days in a row, I had nothing. Now, high achiever me in the past would have said, what can you catch up on? What can you accomplish? My apartment needs to be cleaned up. I need to run errands. I should look at my online banking stuff and cash out some of my points, right? Like I got all the shoulds in my head for like 5 seconds. And then I was like, oh no, I have 3 days in a row off. I'm on vacation. So I took myself to Old Navy to replace last year's Old Navy's t-shirts because they only really last a year.
Yeah.
And I got a couple of fancy shirts too that I'm excited about at Old Navy. And I took myself out for meals. I sat by the pool in my community for hours. There's I'm if you've never seen me in person, I'm practically translucent. So the sun is not my friend, but I like being outside in what I call organized nature. So like concrete slab and a lounge chair makes me happy. The woods does not. Right. So I sat by the pool and I read. I sat by the pool and I meditated, and I didn't care that I looked sort of foolish because one of the meditations had like aura clearing. So I was like waving my arms around. There was some breath work involved. So there was a little bit of like, I just did it all. And I went into the pool and I sat on a lounge chair and I read and I relaxed. And I will tell you what, I had a hard time getting out of bed this morning because I was really tired from relaxing and like not using my brain. But now that I'm in it, I feel like this is amazing.
Yeah.
I'm in it. And so it's something I would never have done in the past. That was like, old Lauren would have needed to figure out how to be productive. Old Lauren, who the first time she took time off, cleaned her slats of her blinds one by one, right? Because
I remember that story.
Yeah, because I was so antsy to be doing something that didn't make any kind of difference. Now I just run the, Swiffer duster over them every once in a while. Coachable Lauren, who was willing to shift as long as it took, just took a vacation, even though I just took a vacation like 3 weeks ago. Like my brain has shifted in ways that I never thought possible.
I love that. It's such a testament to who you are and what can happen when you're available and open for change and for possibility in your life. I love that.
Yeah, so good. So both of our stories are great examples of being coachable. And in our case, we both coached ourselves into things that neither one of us would have coached ourselves into before, right? So there was like the coaching that leads to the self-coaching. And that's our topic today, is coaching, which is sort of funny that, we've been in this podcast for a little over a year and we talk about coaching inside each of our topics, but we've never explicitly talked about coaching and its value and its purpose, and especially like in what it does for hard workers, high achievers, busy people who put themselves last, who put service to others first. So I would love to kick off by hearing sort of your story of why you hired a coach in the first place. Like, what was the turning point for you where you realized something has to change and I'm not doing it by myself?
Yeah. This is a pretty fundamental story for me because it's not only how my life got totally turned upside down in the most amazing way, but it's how I got into coaching as what I want to do as a profession and as sort of a real passion of mine, where I'm hungry to learn more. When I do it, it doesn't feel like a job. And I found myself in my job. My role was changing. It wasn't changing very intentionally, just circumstances had kind of shifted. And it really kind of threw me off my game. It wasn't explicit change. I have a really hard time, or I should say I had a hard time or a harder time with ambiguity. And so things were just shifting under my feet a little bit without a lot of clarity. And the pandemic happened in early 2020. And I was at that time a chief of staff. And my role was really to have a finger on the pulse of the organization. And that was really hard. I wasn't traveling. I wasn't in an office. I was in meetings all day. So it was really hard to find the time to really talk to people and kind of get the vibe of the organization, how things were happening, what I needed to do, what the team needed to do to better serve the mission. And I had been stuck before. I'd been stuck for a day, a few weeks, maybe. But I found myself stuck for a number of months in a row, and I had exhausted all of the knowledge, all of the tools, all of the things, all of the people. I was in therapy. I'm still in therapy, but that wasn't really getting to it. It was, I was stuck in some current mindset that I could not get out of. And so after exhausting everything I knew how to do, I was like, I need help. I mean, the first thing for me is like, I had to admit that I couldn't do this on my own and that I needed some help. And so I hired a coach, and it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made, because that experience, that short 3-month engagement, totally flipped my thinking. It showed me that I was responsible for a lot of the stuckness, that it wasn't that the finger that I was pointing at a bunch of other people for creating the situation I was in was actually not reality. It wasn't what's happening. I was self-sabotaging myself. I had a certain mindset the context that I was seeing everything through, and it just stumbled me up. And I was sort of I was trying to run with a bunch of baggage on me that was holding me back and not serving me. And so that's how I got into coaching. And that's the story of how coaching really changed everything about me in that engagement.
Before you decided to get a coach, you said you were like doing all the things. You had a therapist, reading the books, trying to, figure it out. What was like the thing that made you even realize coaching was a possibility for you, that like hiring a coach might be in your best interest?
It was the exhaustion of all those things. Like I had come to the end of my rope, like nothing was working. And I was 40 at the time. I never had a challenge with relationships before, and I was really struggling in all of my relationships. And so I really just exhausted everything I knew to do. And it was like, what's the thing I haven't tried? What's the thing that I haven't done yet? And I was had friends that were coaches. And so someone recommended someone, and I was like, yes, I am desperate. I need to change. This isn't working. This is not how I want my life to go. I can't seem to get out of this cycle and this pattern. And so it was like, I had no other choice. And I talk to people now all the time who are looking to hire me, and some people are there. Some people are like, I am so stuck. I cannot get out of this pattern. And some people just really want to elevate their game. And so I'm always telling people, whether they want to work with me or they're, friends of friends, hire a coach early. You're going to save yourself a lot of pain and time and energy trying to figure it out yourself. I'm sure we're going to talk about this, but there's so many benefits to coaching and to having a coach that really give us insight into clarity and serving as a mirror to ourselves, so that we can see ourselves more clearly and see how oftentimes we are getting in our own way of having the life we want to have and having the success that we want to have.
My story is similar to yours, that it was like right around the pandemic. I actually got my signs from the universe much earlier, right? Like I'd been burnt out for years. I'd been the person taking on everybody else's like offloads for a long time. And I was tired, but I thought this is my purpose in life, is to like go into companies and organizations, clean up the problems, and be everybody else's support. I was really good at that. I still am really good at that. I don't do it that way anymore because it damages me, but I was really good at that. And I knew I needed a break, and I didn't know how to take it. And I was obsessively cleaning up my apartment and just like trying to get my life in order so I could get my life in order, which is something that we do when we're spinning out, is like, totally. Let me fix all the things around me before I fix me, so that I'll be like perfectly ready to fix me. And then I broke my shoulders, which is a story I've mentioned in a number of our episodes. But I was chasing a Roomba vacuum. I slid on my floor, my wood floor in my socks, launched forward, broke both my shoulders. First joke from everybody independent of each other, people who didn't know each other, with my arms in 2 slings down at my sides, were saying, oh, you can't be a hand raiser anymore. And ha ha ha, like that was like, I'm not saying the universe threw me on the floor, right? Like I am pronoia based, which was in another episode also, that pronoia, the opposite of paranoia, is that the universe is out to help you. But I think that, you know, why ever it happened, I think I just made up a word, why ever. But I think that whatever the reason that it happened, it stopped me in my tracks. And it was my opportunity to say something's got to change. And I went back to work with full intention to work 40 hours a week, not take on any side projects, not take on any other departments. And I had no plan for it. And as we know, a goal without a plan is simply a wish. And so my wishes went right down the drain. I went right back to 80 to 100-hour work weeks. Our finance person left. So now I was like the co-head of finance with our CEO, with no ability to do math. And that was the first thing I said to him, like, don't make me do the reports. I can't do that. And he was like, no problem. Just hire a consultant who's a CPA to do the finance work. I'll take care of communication to the board about finance. You manage the people on the team, and just like real quick, hire us a VP of finance. And he was not dismissive. He was being planful. He was my best boss ever. But all of that work fell on me. And so I went right back to these 80 to 100-hour work weeks. And the new year started, the pandemic began. He came to my office and he said, what do we do? And my brain just like shut down. And my insides were saying like, I don't know. Why are you asking me? Don't ask me any more questions. I have no idea what we should do. I am overwhelmed. I'm in the middle of managing a project that's requiring imported lighting and walls from China. Like, I don't know. And like somewhere under there, I was this HR professional who just wanted to work 40 hours a week. And a series of things. One was being on Zoom and seeing my own face and seeing that my skin looked gray and I looked sad and tired. Looking at other jobs and feeling like they all looked the same and I was going to end up working 1 billion hours a week somewhere else. And then realizing that this was the wrong way, but realizing that even though I'd been coaching for 15 years, I didn't have a certification. Like, why don't I go get a certification? Like, add that to my plate. And then I'll be more valuable to the next company because I'll have a coaching certification. The turn for me was when I was talking to someone I had formerly worked with at another company who had gotten a coaching certification to ask about the logistics of a coaching certification. And I said to her, I don't know how I'm going to fit this in because I'm already working 80 plus hours a week and that's not going to change. And she said to me something I say to clients all the time, if you say so. And I hired her immediately, right? Like we've talked about this before. I got like super angry, like she doesn't understand me. And then I realized like nothing was going to change if nothing changed.
Right.
I went from one company to another. And instead of having this like fresh start where I could work 40 hours a week, I just brought me with me. and started doing the same thing plus at this new company. And nothing was going to change if I didn't change. And I had read some books, and I read them with the wrong mindset. One of my favorite books is The Gifts of Imperfection, which is Brene Brown. And I had read the book years before for a client because she had perfectionism running through her blood. And I read it to help her move out of perfectionism. I reread it after I started being coached, and I was like, oh, this book's about me. It's not just my clients. But immediately I started with this coach, and changes came so fast and so slow.
Yep.
Right. It took me several months to get from 80-hour work weeks to 40-hour work weeks. And somewhere in the middle there, I had to ask my CEO to help me offload some work, which felt like it took the most bravery I've ever had to have. It helped me realize that all I wanted to do was be a coach full time and not squeeze it into my side work.
Yeah.
And it made it so that there was somebody outside of me asking me the questions I wasn't willing or able to ask myself, or that I couldn't think of because like I was inside of my own head.
Totally.
I heard you say before, and I experienced this too, that when you by the time you hired a coach, you were saying to yourself, like, I can't do this. This is not working. And that's how I felt too. And when I started with my coach, and I'm wondering if that your experience was similar, when I started with my coach, she had me fill out a questionnaire, which I do for my clients too. And her questions were all future oriented. My answers were all a list of things I didn't want anymore.
Mm-hmm.
My head was so filled with how I didn't want my life to be that I couldn't even imagine how I wanted it to be. Did you have that experience?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I had the same exact experience, but I often also talk a lot about inertia. And I think what you're saying is we get in these patterns and these ways of being and ways of doing things that just like continually necessitate that we're just going along the same way that we've always gone. And it's really hard. We talk a lot about this, get altitude from that, to be able to see above the trees, to be able to see above the mess that we see or we think is happening in our lives. And yeah, I mean, I didn't know what was possible. I couldn't even fathom possibility because all I was looking at was the past, all the mistakes that I made. I saw those as bad things, as me being bad, as me being incompetent, of sort of proving the point of the imposter syndrome that I had. And so I was just so stuck in the present, in the past, that I couldn't even envision what possibility or the future looked like, or what that I could even create something different. I thought this is the way it's just always going to be, because up until now, this is the experience that I had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so eye-opening to see now what I imagined was impossible then. And I always talk about 5 years ago, Lauren sitting in the corner laughing at all of the ways I've become, because she couldn't have imagined it, right? Like former me could not have imagined that I was choosing this life where I became an entrepreneur, which is so dangerous, and where I am choosing my life, where I'm choosing to work fewer than 40 hours a week, where I'm writing a book, where I have a podcast, where I have a group of friends and colleagues who I don't necessarily work with, but who are my support system, where formerly I thought I was their support system. And it turns out that it can be reciprocal. Who knew? Yeah. Right. So I see this a lot in the high achievers that I work with, that there's a lot of like, everybody's my responsibility, so there isn't time for me. I have to get out of what I'm doing before I can figure out, what's even possible. So when you think about like where you were and where you are now, what do you think 5 years ago John would say to you about you?
Can I, before I answer that question, as you were talking, I just got super emotional. Like my eyes are welling up with tears, for two reasons. One, because I've seen what you've created in your own life, from where you have been to where you are now and to what you're going to continue to create. And same for me, but also for all of some sadness for all of the years that I know that I wasted with patterns and with ways of thinking that just held me back from finding peace and meaning and fulfillment and the growth that I wanted to find in my life. And I'm just so grateful that for whatever reason, the universe kind of just orchestrated all of this stuff in my life for me to be able to find those things and to see growth and to have growth. It's not easy. Gosh, I mean, for those of you who have been following us and listening for the past 6 months, it has been a really, probably the hardest time in my entire life. But there's just something different about going through challenging times when you have the tools and the resources to be able to own it and to ask the questions about not why is this happening to me, but thinking about how is this happening for me? What is my responsibility in this? Not blame, not owning it all, but sort of really just getting out of that really victim-y mentality that keeps us reactive and defensive. And I'm just so filled with gratitude that we both have been, something happened in us to be able to see different and to see clearly. Okay, so now that's out of the way. To answer your question was, what would John 5 years ago say about his future?
Say about you, about today, John.
Oh, I think 5 years ago, John 5 years ago, would be completely blown away that this John like actually knows himself and loves himself. And gosh, I don't know why I'm so emotional today. Doesn't have to be perfect for other people. And this John is just owning it, owning all of it. The parts where there's quote success, the parts where there are challenges, and the fact that I am achieving results that I want to achieve, relationships, how I see the world, how I'm navigating the world. There is, even in the difficult times, so much more joy and meaning than there was in the past.
That's amazing.
How about you, Lauren? That's a really good question.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I mentioned, 5 years ago, me sort of laughing in the corner and thinking like, that's nice for you. Like, I love that path for you. Right. And sort of being dissociated from who I am now and how I am now. Less so what I do. Right. So like we've just talked about doing and having and being, right? It's my being that has shifted. I remember when you and I first met, we were on Zoom together, and that very first set of classes, we had an exercise where we introduced ourselves and we had to write down what we thought of the person, like judgments of the person. And I was just looking to see if I had it in front of me, and I don't, but I remember thinking about you: hard on himself, high expectations, perfection, probably the most like me. And I think I was right? I think part of what drives our friendship and our ability to be friends and work together and step out of those things and coach each other is our similarities and our ability to see in ourselves and each other the similar areas where we get stuck.
Yeah.
Right. We have some grand differences too, and those come up also. But I remember sitting in that Zoom room and sort of deciding preemptively who I was connecting with and who I wasn't connecting with.
Same.
I was very right about a couple and very wrong about a couple. Right.
Yeah.
But I think, 5 years ago, Lauren would be saying, how did you do that? Right. And 5 years ago, Lauren would be thinking about the doing. What were the steps that you took in order to do the things that you're doing?
Yep.
What were the steps you took in order to be sitting by the pool all weekend, not with your laptop? Right. And being in a position where you tell your clients, I'm going to be out of town these days, and having your clients respect that. The old Lauren would have been, you see those memes all the time that are like, in Europe, I'll be on vacation for the month of August. I'll return calls in September. In the US, I'm going in to have a kidney transplant. I'll be online until I'm asleep on the operating table. And as soon as I wake up, I'll return your call. That's old Lauren, right? That's 5 years ago, Lauren, who would be in the dentist chair with her phone up above her head, blocking the dentist light so that I could make sure I wasn't letting anybody down. And what has changed is like my confidence in my being, in who I am, in how I am. And then the doing comes second. And that is all from having a coach.
Yeah.
Helping me see that I was making these decisions for myself, that I was putting these limits on myself about how things could be. And most of my clients are not entrepreneurs. They're not looking to be entrepreneurs. A couple have become entrepreneurs, but for the most part, they're corporate people who want to stay corporate people. They just want to be happier about it. They just want to find more joy and balance in the integration of work and life and boundaries and joy and, all of those things. I think I said joy 3 times, but we start in this doing mindset. And for me, the most impactful part of being coached is looking at my being.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much that I needed an instructional guide for how to be a grown-up, although that would be cool.
I would love that. I would
actually love that. If anybody's out there writing it, let me know. I'll buy it. But what I needed was learning how to forgive myself for the things that I thought were imperfect that I was covering up, learning how to love myself, learning how to ask myself what choice I wanted to make. I would forget all the time that I had choices. I was always in reaction mode, always doing, always helping, always serving. And I do a lot more now asking, like, what am I creating? What is this heading towards? What purpose is this serving? And all of that came from allowing myself to be coached.
Yeah, I just, a few things just came to mind as you were talking. One is, when I think about what both the hardest and the most transformative idea or thing I learned in coaching, it was that I still am working through resistance. I am resisting what is. I'm resisting the way things are. And one of the biggest things that I resisted early on in coaching was my responsibility for what was in my life. That I had, either because I didn't have boundaries, I was a people pleaser, I had these patterns, that I was actually responsible for creating this life that I had, that I didn't love, that I wasn't happy with. I wasn't happy with who I was, how I was being in that. And the other thing I learned is that from that place of being, or taking a step back, life is hard. There are hard things in life. And you can either have hard now, easy later, or easy now, hard later. And the thing that I learned is that I would rather, based on how I'm being, have hard now, have hard conversations, have boundaries, make the hard choices now to create what I want to create, so then I can experience what I want later in life. And I found that even though I'm not super conflict averse, I would let conflict kind of simmer or not address things, not stand up for myself, not create boundaries. And that was easy for me to do. It was easy in the doing, not in the being. And it just kind of kicked down conflict down the road. And so this idea of like hard now, easy later, easy now, hard later was a real shift that like, I know if I'm taking the easy way now, it's likely going to be harder in the future. And if I just like own up and like have courage and do the hard thing now, whatever those consequences are, it's going to be much easier for me. And there's going to be much more flow, much more abundance, much more meaning and fulfillment down the road than the other way around.
Mm-hmm. I remember when I was talking to one of my coaches, and I say one of because I've had different coaches at different times now for different purposes, but I was talking to one of my coaches and I was remembering the scene in Friends where Monica got found out that she had a closet full of crap.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, she was the like obsessively clean, organized one. And then everybody suddenly learns that she keeps this closet just full of junk that when you open the door, everything falls out. And that was, for me, that was my doing closet, my like stuff I needed to do for other people. And I was worried that if I opened my being closet, there'd be nothing in there. And there were 2 or 3 sessions in a row where I got into this like very sort of abstract view of who I am based on like what's in my being closet, right? Like my doing closet is full. Stuff can keep falling out of there and I will handle it. Then I turn around and decide who I want to be when I grow up. And it's like an echo chamber, right? Like I could use it as a panic room if I wanted to. There's nothing in there. It turned out there was tons in there, but I was so like tightly wound in the things that I needed to do that I couldn't even see who I wanted to be. So for me, having a coach helped me see my being, which for 5 years ago, Lauren is like, your being is helpful and smart and good at fixing problems. And right, like it was all the doing. Like I didn't even understand what being was. And so for me, the like ultimate value in being coached, and that has led me to being able to self-coach or lean on friends and tell them what I need, or, you know, all of these growth areas, has been being able to see who I am beyond what I do.
Totally. Yes.
What do you think it's been for you? What's like the ultimate value for you in having a coach?
I think a few things. One is the ability to get altitude and to see things differently. I am a creative genius. I have the ability to create the most fanciful stories based on things that are happening in my life. I can look at something that happens and my interpretation of that fact can go like a million different ways. And so the ability to get some distance from it and to get some elevation and see the bigger picture, and really, as simple as it sounds, separate fact from fiction, fact from stories, from narratives, from past experiences, has been probably the most meaningful part of coaching for me, because I have lots of stories that I tell myself about myself and other people and other people's actions. The other thing is the idea of a possibility, and this idea that everything I want is on the other side of my comfort zone. That as someone, if you're familiar with the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 6, which means I really look for safety and security in the world. I see the world as potentially bad. And so I'm always trying to find safety, find security. And that can lead me to making myself small, to getting really comfortable. I think this is true for everyone, not just 6s, but I think particularly for me or for 6s, it's especially challenging. And like the story I told at the top of the call of our podcast, the ability to recognize that fear and not let fear be the last word is the thing I think hands down that's really helped me grow, helped me evolve, helped me to love myself more and love others more.
Beautiful. I could talk to you about this all day.
All day. All day.
We're at the end of our show, though. It goes so fast every time.
It does. Oh my goodness. I can't believe it.
Thanks for being with us. And thanks as always for any feedback that you have. We love hearing from our listeners how this is going for them, what they want to hear about. And especially that it feels like we're in the room with them having a conversation. That's our goal. And that's, I think, for me, the joy of being in this conversation. We'll see you next time.
We're so grateful you decided to be with us during this episode. Subscribe, rate, and share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. And join us next time for more Real Talk.